Here we are. Until last time, we had covered the Great Plains of India. So that was in first we did it region-wise. We did the Punjab, Ganga, and the Brahmaputra plains, and later we went on to do it the north to south division-wise. Meaning we did the जाइए मिटाइए इतने एंटाइटल्ड तो नहीं बिहेव करना चाहिए आप लोगों ने. I said entitled नहीं बिहेव करना चाहिए. सब कुछ हाथ में नहीं मिलेगा आपको. If you cannot see something, rub the board. I've been doing it ever since I've walked in the class. If you need to see something, you should rub the board and get it clear. Okay, here we are. So we are going north to south divisions देखेंगे. So those are the Bhabar plains, the Terai plains, followed by the Bhangar plains and the Khadar plains. अब खदर and Bhangar plains जो है वो alluvial plains है जो rivers का alluvium जब फैलता है तो उससे बनते हैं. Okay, खदर being the newer alluvial plains and Bhangar being the older ones. Okay, whereas Bhabar and Terai जो है वो directly they are at the foothills of the mountains. So this is essentially what a Bhabar plain looks like. Can you see this? We are saying you can see larger rocks, larger boulders and everything. Okay, and usually all of these come down with the river. They're simply dropped at the base of the river at the foothills, and not at the base of the river, at the base of the mountain. At the foothills, they drop all this. The rivers usually disappear within these mountains and then re-emerge in the terai. Okay, so can you see this dryish landscape? You can see a few trees, but those are large. Okay, those trees are usually large. The boulders are larger, and so on and so forth. And then this is the terai plains. Okay, you will find grass over there, mostly marshy, boglandish, wetlandish. That is the kind of features you will find over here. Okay, trees will sure definitely be there. In fact, you will find a lot of lush and luxuriant vegetation. But this is generally what the terais look like. Okay, okay. And this finishes off our Indian plains. Now we move on to the peninsular plateau. Once again, I repeat myself. How many ever proper nouns you find, just stick to those. Okay, because UPSC questions you on the proper nouns. So here we are, the very first one. एक बार ना ठीक से देख लेते हैं and then उसके बाद आप उसको कंसिडर कीजिए. We are saying when we consider the peninsular plateau, हम उसके 3 divisions देखेंगे. We'll divide it into 3 divisions. One is this upper portion, okay, the central highlands, जिसमें सारे पठार वगैरह आएंगे, सारे plateaus वगैरह आएंगे. Okay, उसके बाद आता है ये Deccan plateau. This is the Deccan plateau, and then lastly you have the Ghat section. Okay, the Western Ghats and the Eastern Ghats. You'll have that section. Okay, so we are looking at the peninsular plateau. Okay, let's look at this. We were saying कि अगर आप वो मध्य भारत या Central Indian highlands देख रहे हैं तो उसमें this is the Aravallis. Can you make out the Aravallis? This is going to be the Aravallis. Okay, this brown colored mountain range is going to be the Aravallis. Okay, from the Aravallis begin westward. सबसे पहले आता है मारवाड़ या मेवाड़ plateau. Okay, followed by the Malwa plateau. The Malwa plateau which lies between the Aravallis and the Vindhyas. Okay, that is the one that we are looking at. Then you see the Madhya Bharat Pathar over here, the Madhya Bharat plateau over here. It is above the Malwa plateau. Beside that, you see the Bundelkhand plateau. Okay, Bundelkhand plateau is one of the oldest regions, heavily dissected, heavily eroded, senile topography कहेंगे उसको. So that kind of a plateau. Okay. Over here, you see to the east of the Vindhyas and Satpuras, mostly to the east of the Satpuras, you will see the Bagelkhand range. Okay, Bagelkhand range में plateau ही बुलाना चाहिए उसको, Bagelkhand plateau. Okay, you see the Bagelkhand plateau, and then from there on, 3 major plateaus: the Chota Nagpur, Hazaribagh, and the Ranchi plateau. Okay, you have the Chota Nagpur plateau above, the Hazaribagh plateau in the middle, and then the Ranchi plateau below. Okay, this is the thing. Now, इसी का extension, यहाँ पर you will find an alluvial plain, the Rajmala or the Garo Gap. That is what we are looking at. And then here you will find an extension of this same peninsular plateau over here in the form of the Shillong plateau or the Meghalaya plateau and the Karbi Anglong plateau. Okay, that is there. Fine, ठीक है. नीचे आ जाइए. You have the Deccan plateau. अब Deccan plateau के multiple छोटे अलग plateaus है. You have the Maharashtra plateau to the left. Okay, the Chhattisgarh plains over here. Okay, above over here the Chhattisgarh plains. You have the Dandakaranya plateau or the Bastar plateau over this on this side. The Telangana plateau just below it, and then here you find the Karnataka plateau. Karnataka plateau gets divided into 2 parts: the Malnad and the Maidan. Okay, 2 different distinctive regions. Malnad being the rockier part, Maidan being the rolling plains part. Maidan, right? So Maidan being the rolling plains part, Malnad being the rocky part. Okay, so that is what you find, and this is the general. And then of course you should ideally find the Western Ghats and the Eastern Ghats to the east and west of the Deccan plateau. Okay, ठीक है. Now let's understand a few things at the Peninsula Plateau. It is Peninsula Plateau happens to be the oldest, most stable landmass. Okay, just because it is oldest and just because it is stable does not mean it does not have any evidence of seismic activity. I had seen a question where somebody had, marked an answer and told me that since it is the most stable landmass, clearly we do not have enough seismic activity. That's not true. You do have seismic activity because within the plate, within the craton also, there may be faults, there may be stresses set up, and clearly there will be faults over there, and such faults will usually weaken over time, and over time they'll develop into more larger rifts, and clearly there will be seismic activity related to that. Okay, so even though it is the oldest, most stable landmass, you will find evidence of seismic activity over here, especially the Bhima fault, Narmada fault, Godavari fault. You're looking at those. So it is mainly composed of Archean gneiss and schist. Okay, gneiss is a metamorphic rock, and clearly we are looking at a long period of faulting, folding, and stuff like that. Okay, Archean means बहुत 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 पुराने जमाने की बात कर रहे हैं हम लोग. We are talking about very old rock. Okay, the average elevation is anywhere around 600 to 900 meters, and the general elevation is west to east. Okay, the general elevation is going to be from west to east. The platform, the entire plateau dips a little towards the east to the right. Okay, that is where the plateau dips, and most of the rivers of the plateau flow from west to east. Okay, so you will find that most of the rivers will flow in this direction. This is the direction for the flow of the rivers. Okay, but you will find two major rivers, Narmada and you will find two major rivers, Narmada and Tapi, which flow from the east towards the west because they flow through rift valleys. They will follow their own path rather than following uh, the slope of the land, okay, of the plateau. You will find a lot of emphatic presence of black soil over here. We are talking about this part, okay, in the northwestern part, in the western and northwestern part of the plateau. You will find emphatic presence of black soil, and there are recurrent phases of submergence and upliftment because there is because there has been so much crustal fracturing and faulting. Clearly, because of that, you will find multiple phases where there has been submergence and emergence and upliftment and so on and so forth. Okay, the general features that you find over here are, wait a second now. Okay, the general features that you find over here are tors, block mountains, rift valleys, bare rocky structures, hummocks, dikes, all those things you will find over here. It is a complex structure of ravines and gorges in Chambal and Bhind and Morena. एक second now. We'll look for uh, is this picture clear enough? This shows you exactly how a ravine and gully landscape is going to look like. Okay, we are saying that usually it is a very heavily dissected landscape. This is exactly the kind of structure that you will find on plateaus. Okay, so on the Peninsula Plateau, these kind of structures, hummocks, dikes, ravine and gully landscape, or heavily dissected plateaus is a very common thing to find. Okay, that is what we are looking at. And there is a conflict especially in the Chambal, Bhind, Morena areas. Okay, the boundaries, remember, the boundaries are going to be to the northwest, it is going to be the Delhi Ridge. To the west, it is going to be the Gir Range, the one in Gujarat. To the east, it is going to be the Rajmal Hills, followed by the Rajmal Malda Gap. Okay, and to the south, it is going to be the Kadabom Hills, which is considered as the southernmost extension of the Western Ghats. Okay, that is going to be it. And lastly, there is a small extension over here where you can see that the plateau breaks properly. And there is a western side of the plateau clearly, followed by the Rajmal or the Malda Gap. In the middle, you can see the Rajmal or the Malda Gap over here, and followed by this section. Okay, this is going to be the Shillong Plateau, Meghalaya Plateau, or the Karbi Anglong Plateau, followed by that. Karbi Anglong in Assam, Shillong Plateau in Meghalaya. Okay, that is where you will see it. And like I told you earlier, just because this is a very stable landmass does not mean that you do not find seismic activity over here. Of course, you will find that around the Bhima fault, the Narmada fault, the Godavari fault. That is where you will find these. Okay, so you will find some kind of seismic activity also over here. These are the divisions of the peninsular plateau. You make them as, first of all, the Deccan Plateau, which gets divided into North Deccan, South Deccan, Western Ghats, and the Eastern Ghats. Okay. Then you come to the Central Highlands. You have the Aravallis, the Malwa, Vindhyas, Bundelkhand, Bagelkhand, and the Chota Nagpur Plateau. And oh, sure. And the Northeastern Plateau, which you divide as the Meghalaya Plateau and the Karbi Anglong Plateau. Okay. Okay. Now you go to the Deccan Plateau. The very first thing that you talk about the Deccan Plateau is you say the boundaries mark kar lete hai. To the west, you have the Western Ghats. To the east, you have the Eastern Ghats, obviously. In the north, you have the Satpura, Michael, and Mahadev Hills. Okay, Mahadev Hills should be a little below over here. Can you see this? The Satpura range, the Mahadev Hills, and the Michael range. This is the place, okay? So to the north of the Deccan Plateau, you will have this, the Satpura Hills, the Mahadev Hills, and the Michael range. Can you make out? Okay, that is the this that we're looking at, the northern boundary. And to the south, obviously, you have the Indian Ocean, okay? Now, the North Deccan part is obviously covered by thick basalt of the Cretaceous period. Okay, remember that time 1066 billion years ago, India was somewhere in the southern hemisphere, and it was traveling from the Reunion Islands. Okay, somewhere closer to the Reunion hotspot. We got the Deccan Plateau over there, and clearly the basalt is from that time. Okay, so North Deccan Plateau is mainly covered by that thick basalt, and the North Deccan Plateau usually comprises of the Maharashtra Plateau. You have the Maharashtra Plateau, the Mahanadi Basin, Chhattisgarh. This is the part. You talk of the Maharashtra Plateau, the Chhattisgarh Plains, the Garjat Hills, the Mahanadi Basin, and this Dandakaranya region. Okay, that is all going to be part of the North Deccan Plateau. Okay, and the South Deccan Plateau will obviously have the Karnataka Plateau, the Telangana Plateau towards the east, and then in the south you have the Tamil Nadu Plateau, Tamil Nadu uplands. Okay, so that will make up the South Deccan Plateau. Obviously, the Karnataka Plateau gets divided into two parts. The upper rocky region, rocky hills type of region, is called as the Malnad, and the lower region, the southern rolling plains, are called as the Medan. Okay, remember this was asked to you once in exams, UPSC exams. Okay, now you go to the Western Ghats. We have decided the boundaries. We've got the major subdivisions. Now you go to the Western Ghats. Okay, Western Ghats, famously called as Sahyadris in Maharashtra. If you go to the Karnataka region, they will be called as the Nilgiris. And once you go to the even further south in Kerala, they famously get called as the Anaimalai or the Cardamom Hills. Okay, that's what they are called. Most of the peninsula, Western Ghats acts as a major water divide. So most of the peninsular rivers, the larger rivers that you know of, have their origin somewhere in the Western Ghats. Okay, so it's higher in elevation than the Eastern Ghats. Now the logic is also that the Western Ghats are pretty new. Okay, like 60, 70 million years ago. You're looking at that time. Okay, whereas the Eastern Ghats are like maybe 1 billion years ago or something. That is when they were formed. So clearly the Western Ghats will be higher in elevation, and they will be far more continuous than the Eastern Ghats also. Okay. And remember about the Western Ghats, the height of the Western Ghats will always increase when you go towards the south. Okay, in the north, the hills or the peaks are a little lower, but clearly when you go towards the south, the hills will become a little higher. Okay, the tallest peak also is something that you find somewhere in southern India, in Kerala. Okay, the gaps or passes, they are more continuous than the Eastern Ghats, and clearly the gaps and passes are important. They will ask you about the gaps and Western Ghats. They've done that before, they might do it again. So the gaps or passes from north to south are going to be the Thal Ghat or the Kasara Ghat that we know of, the Bhor Ghat, which is a connection between Mumbai and Pune, Marshes Ghat, another famous hill station sort of a thing, the Nane Ghat, Chorla Ghat, the one with the Goa connection, and Palghat or Palakkad. Okay, these are the famous ghats over there. Ghats money, a place where you cross across the Western Ghats. Okay. And the highest peak will be in the Western Ghats. The highest peak is found in Anamudi, which is in Anaimalai range, and Dodabetta in the Nilgiris. Dodabetta being the tallest peak in the Nilgiris. Okay. And it runs through 6 states of India. You begin with Gujarat, go to Maharashtra, Goa, Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu. Okay. These are the 6 states through which the Western Ghats run. Okay. Now you go to the Eastern Ghats. Eastern Ghats jo hote hai, white shirt out. Okay. The Eastern Ghats jo hote hai, it's a discontinuous range. Okay. The reason that it is discontinuous, we already discussed this, that they are very old. Okay. You're talking of 1 billion years ago. Your proper whole mountains formed 1 billion years ago. Now, after 1 billion years ago, clearly there is going to be a lot of weathering, erosion, denudation, and so on and so forth. Okay, so clearly the height will be a little reduced and it will be subject to weathering even more. Also consider that there are huge, heavy rivers coming from the Western Ghats, way up to the Eastern Ghats, crossing the Eastern Ghats, dissecting it completely, and going straight into the Bay of Bengal. Okay, that is what is happening. So clearly they will be heavily dissected, and you can see the entire erosion over there. Okay, so they are lower in elevation, they are older than the Western Ghats, and very heavily dissected hills. Okay. The famous peaks over here are Jindagada, Armakonda, Devmali. Okay, Jindagada being the tallest one, Armakonda is considered the second tallest one, and then of course there's the Devmali. Okay, and the famous important ranges over here are Nalamala, Palakonda, Jaudi, Mahendragiri, Chevroy hills. The reason why I'm reading out the names of all these hills and ranges is because UPSC questions you. They give you a bunch of 4 options, and then they ask you which of these belong to the Eastern Ghats or Western Ghats, or do not belong to the Eastern or Western Ghats. Okay, and you'll have to name them. So you have to remember which ranges belong to the Eastern Ghats and which belong to the Western Ghats. So Nalmala, Palakonda, Javadi, Mahendragiri, Chevroy, Eastern Ghats, whereas famous hills of the Western Ghats are going to be Sahyadris, as you call them, or Nilgiris, Cardamom Hills. Those all will be a part of Western Ghats. Okay. The next section that we already discussed, right? We are going to the Deccan Plateau, then the Central Highlands, and lastly the Shillong and Meghalaya Plateau. Okay, that is what we are considering. So now here we are going to the Central Highlands. Okay, Central Highlands famously gets called as the Madhya Bharat Pathar or the Madhya Bharat Plateau. Okay, general elevation is anywhere between 700 to 1000 meters, and famous hills over here are going to be the Aravallis, Kaimur, Vindhyas, Satpuras. Let's look at them over here. Okay, you're looking at the Aravalli range over here. Can you make out the Aravalli range over here? This is the Aravallis. Okay, this is the Vindhyas. Okay, this is the Kaimur Hills, Mahadev, Michael range. Okay, Mahadev, Michael are considered to be the northern boundary of the Deccan Plateau. But Vindhya Hills, Kaimur Hills, Ramgarh Hills, these are all part of the Madhya Bharat range. Okay, Madhya Bharat Plateau. All right. Okay. So we are saying an eastern extension. So we say Aravallis form the western boundary, whereas Satpuras form the southern boundary. Okay, Satpuras will form the southern boundary, Aravallis will form the western boundary. Eastern extension जो होता है वो राजमहल गैप प्रोवाइड कर देगा. Rajmahal hills will be that eastern extension. Hills and hills के peaks याद रखना जरूरी होता है. So in the Aravallis, the highest peak is going to be Guru Shikhar, which is the tallest also. In general, in the entire Madhya Bharat Plateau, this is the tallest peak also, Guru Shikhar. Okay. Vindhyas, you have the Sadbhavana peak, and in the Satpuras, you have Dudhgad. Okay. It's a famous hill station over there. So I suppose you must have heard of it earlier. Okay. Narmada and Tapi famously flow through rift valleys. So they will, as opposed to, in contrast to all the rivers of the Deccan Plateau, they flow in a east to west direction. Okay. Okay. And यमुना के जितने भी tributaries है, most tributaries जो है उनके sources you will either find in the Vindhyan or the Kaimur range, and Banas जो है, which is a tributary of the Chambal, that originates in the Aravallis. Okay, you will cover this more extensively when we do drainage, India drainage. But remember that usually when you talk of plateaus or physiography, sources of rivers and their drainage patterns and all also becomes a point of contention. Okay, it's a point of discussion. Now you go to all of these 3-4 plateaus that we have heard of. Marwar plateau से शुरू करते हैं, the closest to the Aravallis. Okay, I'll show you these plateaus all over again, so you're not confused. This is the Aravallis, the brown colored hill. Okay, this you can see is the Mewad or the Marwar plateau. Next to it is the Malwa plateau. Okay, this is the Madhya Bharat Pathar or the Madhya Bharat plateau, the one in the pink. And then next to it you find the Bundelkhand one. Okay, that is the Bundelkhand plateau. This is the Bagelkhand plateau over here to the east of the Satpuras. Okay, to the east of the Satpuras you find the Bagelkhand plateau, and then over here in this Chota Nagpur region you find Chota Nagpur plateau above, then the Hazaribagh plateau in the middle, and the Ranchi plateau lower. Okay, a little to the south. That is how it goes. And this is the Shillong plateau. Of course, that is not part of the Madhya Bharat Pathar, but just to remember ahead. Okay. Oh, here we are. We are discussing the Madhya Bharat. Now we go to the Marwar plateau. Okay, Marwar or Mewad plateau जो है, that's a plateau in eastern Rajasthan. Sandstone, stone building materials are all found over here. Okay, most of the building materials will come from here. Sandstone, limestone, shale, all of that from the Vindhyan period is found over here. Okay. Sorry. सेडिमेंट्री भी थोड़ा सा ये भी मेटामॉर्फिक भी फॉल्ट्स है ना वहां पे भी ओल्ड टोपोग्राफी है, तो पुराने फॉल्ट्स जो होंगे, ओरिजिनल जो पुराने जमाने के फॉल्ट्स थे वो भी अभी थोड़ा खींच तान के बड़े हो जाते हैं, तो वो सबसे फॉल्ट हो जाता है. सो यू विल फाइंड बोथ ऑफ दिस. Okay, Malwa Plateau lies between the Aravallis and the Vindhyas. That is what you're going to consider. And Malwa Plateau is famous for its black soils. Okay, you will have a good amount of black soils over there. Bundelkhand Plateau famous for the Sinai topography, the one that we saw over here. This kind of topography. Okay, so you will find this kind of topography in the Bundelkhand Plateau. It is famous for that. It is a landscape dominated by ravines created by erosional activities of chambal and tributaries. Okay, a lot of igneous and metamorphic rocks, granite and gneiss का अच्छा खासा खदान है वहाँ पे. Okay, and then of course you will find the Baghelkhand Plateau. You don't find any major Baghelkhand Plateau पे you don't find any major tectonic activity. It is known to be a water divide between Mahanadi towards this side and the Son towards the other side. Okay, a water divide करके act करेगा. It will, to understand the water divide, right? It will direct the rivers in two opposite directions. So Mahanadi towards the east and Son towards the west. Son is a tributary of the Ganga. Mahanadi is a independent river by itself. Okay, a large river on the plateau. Now you go to the Chota Nagpur Plateau. Chota Nagpur Plateau is famous because it comprises of the Ranchi, Palamu, Hazaribagh plateaus. Together you will consider all these plateaus. Okay, it is very rich in Gondwana rocks. Gondwana rocks is where all your coal comes from. Okay, so जितना भी आपका coal है वो mostly Gondwana. Indian coal mostly comes from, majority of Indian coal comes from the Gondwana rocks. Okay, so it is rich in coal and other commercially important minerals. This has a radial drainage pattern. Radial drainage pattern माने ना, you say suppose there is a mountain or a hill or a peak or some sort. Okay, if all rivers come down from here, okay, in a from here and like this, you understand what is happening? You're saying from a central high point, all the rivers are flowing outward in all directions. Okay, so that is called as a radial pattern. So this Chota Nagpur Plateau also serves as a famous radial drainage pattern for the rivers Damodar, Subarnarekha, North Koyal, South Koyal, Barakar. Okay, if you're going to consider India's most famous radial pattern, it has to be the Amarkantak range. Okay, where you find the origin for rivers Narmada, Son, Johila. So that is really famous as the radial drainage pattern के लिए. Okay, but Chota Nagpur Plateau also exhibits that. Hazaribagh पे या फिर Ranchi पे you will find multiple isolated hills. Remember I told you about monadnocks or Inselbergs. This kind of topography will feature those. Okay, you will find a lot of monadnocks, rolling topography monadnocks. Okay, meaning you will find mostly featureless plains. But on those featureless plains, you will find isolated hills. Okay, so this will hold true both for Hazaribagh as well as Ranchi plateaus. Okay, imagine this landscape very well in your head because UPSC has asked you before, if you are going to find these kind of features in a certain landscape, which part of India are you looking at? Okay, okay. And now you go to the northeastern plateau. Okay, northeastern plateau mane this section, na people. See this is the Meghalaya plateau, right? You're looking at the Meghalaya plateau over here, and in Assam part you find the Karbi Anglong plateau. Okay, so you're saying essentially what happens is this is the rest of the peninsular plateau. This one is the rest of the peninsular plateau. You have the Malda gap over here, the Malda gap or the Garo gap over here, the Rajmal Hills gap, and then clearly it has been filled. What has happened is the peninsular plateau broke away. Okay, it broke into two parts. One was Shillong part, the Meghalaya part, and then you have the normal peninsular plateau part. Okay. And between that gap, where that gap broke, clearly it was filled up with alluvial sediments, okay, of the rivers Ganga and Brahmaputra. It was all filled up with that. So that Rajmal Garo gap got filled up, okay. So that is an alluvial plain. And next to it, you find these two plateaus, okay. On either side of the Rajmal Garo gap, you find the peninsular plateau to the left and the extension of it to the right, the Meghalaya plateau and the Karbi Anglong plateau to the right, okay. So we say that it is separated by the Rajmal Garo gap or the Malda gap, okay? And this gap was first formed by faulting, later filled by the alluvial sediments of the Ganga and Brahmaputra. So Meghalaya plateau in Meghalaya, or Shillong plateau in Meghalaya, and the Karbi Anglong plateau in Assam, okay? Divisions of the Meghalaya plateau are going to be called Garo, Khasi, Jaintia. We've known these hills before, no? They are named after the tribes that live over there, okay? Meghalaya plateau is going to be really rich in coal, iron, sillimanite, limestone, uranium, famous for that. Okay, Meghalaya plateau is also famous for receiving a high amount of rainfall from the southwest monsoons. है ना, इंडिया का सबसे ज्यादा रेनफॉल, दुनिया का सबसे ज्यादा रेनफॉल हमको यहाँ मिलता है in Mausandrag. Okay, Cherrapunji earlier, Mausandrag later. So most of this plateau, it's a plateau. Whatever rain it receives is not going to stay over there. Okay, so clearly it is heavily eroded because of this huge rain. And it has because there is no soil, clearly there will be less vegetation cover also. Okay, Shillong happens to be the highest point in this plateau. And now you look at the Karbi Anglong plateau in the Assam. Okay, Karbi Anglong plateau Assam mein lie karta hai. It will also receive maximum rainfall from southwest monsoon, and the average height is anywhere around 300 to 400 meters. Okay, clear so far? All right, let's look at all the major gaps over here. I'll show you them in this first. यहाँ पे देख लीजिए, this is the Goran Ghat. So यहाँ पे we have spelled it as Goran, but it is Goran, Goran, Goran Ghat. Okay. Now this lies in the Aravallis, and it will separate Guru Shikhan from Mount Abu. Okay, that is what it is famous for. It also connects Udaipur to Surohi. Okay. Then you come to the Haldighati Pass. Okay, Haldighati. So that is clearly a thing. It has historical significance from that Battle of Haldighati. Okay. And it also connects that Rajsamand and Pali. Okay, so वो दोनों को connect करता है. Rajsamand is where you have that Kumbhalgarh fort and all that thing. Huh? You're looking at that place. The marble capital of India. You're looking at that place. Okay. Next you come to Asirgarh. Now look at Asirgarh's position. It famously used to be called as the doorway to Deccan. In history, people used to believe that whoever controls Asirgarh used to control the entire Deccan part, because that is the entry point. No? If you go from the north, if you wish to go towards Deccan, Asargarh is the place that you will need to conquer. Okay, so that used to be famously called as the doorway to Deccan. Okay, come to Kasara Ghat over here. Can you make out the Kasara Ghat? Can you make out the Kasara Ghat? That is the Kasara Ghat. It will connect Mumbai to Nasik. Okay, that's the connection between Mumbai to Nasik. Okay, this is Marshes Ghat. Western Ghats are very famous for their biodiversity, right? UNESCO approved site. So we are saying that Marshes Ghat is very famous for that biodiversity thing. Okay, and it's also, you go there in the rains, to enjoy. It's a tourist spot, right? You have Nani Ghat, the one that connects Pune to Junnar, and Bor Ghat that connects Pune to Mumbai. Okay, Mumbai-Pune connection. Then you go to Kumbharli. Kumbharli connects the Konkan region with the Desh region. Okay, now the the coastal part of Maharashtra gets called as Konkan, and the plateau part gets called as Desh. Okay, so it connects the Konkan and the Desh regions. Okay, and then you come to Chorla Ghat. This is your Goa connection. This connects Goa, Karnataka, Maharashtra. It is that connection. Okay, come downwards, you go to Palakkad. Okay, of Palghat over here. Can you see Palghat over here? Okay, the one in Kerala. So that is going to be, that connects Coimbatore to Palakkad. Okay, that is the connection. And lastly, Shenkota Gap, that connects Madurai to Kottayam. Okay, that's the connection. So throughout until the very end in the Western Ghats, you will find this connection. Okay. Okay. मैं जाके हॉटस्पॉट के क्वेश्चंस ढूंढूं क्या? कोस्टल प्लेन्स तो नहीं है. ये वाला बताइए, which of the following passes in Peninsular India is known as doorway to Deccan? Haldighati, Thalghat, Palghat, Asirgarh. Asirgarh. We are talking about Asirgarh. Doorway to Deccan has to be in the middle, na? In the middle of central India mein hona chahiye, I believe. Okay. Haldighati is famous for that battle. Thalghat or Kasara Ghat is the one between Mumbai and Nasik. Palghat is the one in Kerala, which connects Coimbatore to Palghat, and Asirgarh is the doorway to Deccan. Okay. Okay, this one. The Malda Gap, which of the following statements is correct? Okay, Malda Gap separates the North Indian plains from the Peninsular Plateau. The Northeastern Plateau is considered an extension of the Peninsular Plateau. Pagelkhand Plateau is marked by its badland topography caused by the Chambal River, and Chotanagpur Plateau is noted for its emphatic presence of fertile black soil. Which one of these statements is correct? There are 3 incorrect statements, and one of them is correct. Is the Malda Gap the one that separates the North Indian plains from the Peninsular Plateau? What does it separate? Peninsular Plateau and Northeastern Plateau. Malda Gap separates those two. Okay, so the first statement is obviously wrong, because it is not the North Indian plains, it is the Peninsular Plateau which gets separated from Northeastern Plateau. They say Northeastern Plateau gets separated from the Peninsular Plateau over here. Okay, so that statement is wrong. The Northeastern Plateau is considered an extension of the Peninsular Plateau? Yes, this statement is correct. The Bagelkhand Plateau is marked by its badland topography caused by Chambal River? No, that's the Bundelkhand one. Remember, that's the Bundelkhand Plateau, which definitely has that badland topography. Bagelkhand is famous for acting as a water divide between Mahanadi and Son rivers. That's the thing. So, ये वाला statement भी गलत हो गया. Chotanagpur Plateau is noted for its emphatic presence of fertile black soil. No, that would be Chotanagpur Plateau coal, iron ore. We are looking at those things. Commercial minerals. Commercially mined minerals are found in the Chotanagpur Plateau, whereas fertile black soil should be found in the Malwa Plateau. So this is wrong. We'll just go with B. B is correct. और कुछ है plateaus के? ये arrange कर सकते हैं. Arrange the following features from north to south: Michael Hills, Jaudi Hills, Harishchandra Range, and Dandakaranya. North से लेके south तक जाना है. हरिश्चंद्र थोड़ा नीचे आएगा, राइट? वी आर सेइंग माइकल, जावड़ी, जावड़ी इज क्लियरली towards the end. That will be the southernmost thing. So you are looking, two should be the last one, and you should ideally start with Michael. A ना, आपको भी A लग रहा है. You're saying Michael, Dandakaranya, then Harishchandra, then Javdi. Here we are talking of the Michael range over here. Can you see the Michael range over here? That is the Michael range. Then this is going to be the Dandakaranya plateau. Can you see the Dandakaranya plateau? This is Michael. This is Dandakaranya Vastar plateau. This is the Harishchandra range. And lastly, you have the Jaudi hills. कहाँ पे मेरे Jaudi hills? यहाँ नीचे कहीं तो Jaudi hills होने चाहिए. This should in Tamil Nadu. Jaudi hills are in Tamil Nadu. So clearly that is where it should be. Okay. अगर आपको ये exact order नहीं भी पता होगी, even if you do not know the exact order, you should at least know that you will begin, the Jaudi hills are going to be the southernmost part among all these. Okay. So clearly you should end with the 4 and end with the 2 and begin with the 1. है ना? Michael से शुरू करना चाहिए आपने. Michael range should be the starting. ये वाला किया था ना हमने? We had done this yesterday when we had covered the part. Okay, no problem. Moving on to the Indian desert. Okay. Indian desert, when you are talking about the Thar desert, one important feature over here is going to be, you have Marusthali over here. Okay, ये desert के दो parts बनाएंगे. Yellow color का जो desert दिखाई दे रहा है, the yellow colored desert that you can see, you divide it into 2 parts. Okay, you say, and it lies entirely to the west of the Aravallis. Okay, the one to the left of the Luni, okay, or to the west of the Luni river, is called as Marusthali, which is the sandy region. Okay, where you find those sand dunes and stuff like that. Okay, rolling plains and all. Okay, the Bagar part, it is going to be the rocky part of the desert. Okay, so people actually live over here. You have less sand. People actually live in the Bagar part. Surviving in the Marusthali is going to be a little difficult. Okay, so this is called the Thali or the Marusthali, and this is called as the Bagar part. Clear? And that gets divided into 2 parts by the Luni river. Okay, the Luni river which runs across the desert. Okay, and then it lies entirely. This entire desert lies to the west of the Aravallis. Okay, okay. Moving on, chalo. This is called as the Rajasthan plains also. You will find the dunes or Bartons over here. Bartons याद है ना? वो proper sand dunes जो होते थे. Okay. Low precipitation, high evaporation, low vegetation cover, arid climate. Okay. दिन का temperature will be very, very high. And रात के temperatures will be very, very low. Okay. It has a higher elevation than the general northern plains and broadly classified as western desert plains जो है Marusthali के and eastern Rajasthani Bagar. Okay, that is the way. Marusthali is called as dead land. I don't know how to pronounce that. I don't know how to connect that language. We are saying that the eastern part is rocky, western part is covered by land dunes. Okay, even here the western part is going to be covered by land dunes and eastern part is going to be a little rocky. Okay, and Bagar region जो है, that is famously the semi-desert area of the Aravallis. Okay, and we are saying west of the Aravallis. So you find a very thin cover of sand, but it is mostly rocky. Okay, like I said, people live over there. You will still find some vegetation over there. Okay, you will find ephemeral or inland drainage. Ephemeral matlab something that is temporary, which is not permanent. Like how the Ganga, it is permanent, right? It's perennial, it's permanent. It flows through a single channel, doesn't move here or there. It does not appear seasonally and disappear seasonally. That does not happen. With ephemeral drainage, that happens. Okay, inland drainage is a different thing. You say inland drainage money, you don't go and mix into the sea or the rivers or anything. What happens is the river usually disappears within the land itself. Okay, it will either disappear in a lake or something like that. The Luni simply disappears in the run of Kutch. Run of Kutch is a little marshy, right? Blue shirt. Okay, so that is going to be the inland drainage. Okay, now because the river has these are 2 different things. Inland drainage or endoric drainage is different from the ephemeral drainage. Okay, so we are saying ephemeral drainage and inland होता है, ये दोनों है यहाँ पे. Inland drainage meaning the river joins a lake or a playa, and the brackish water that is formed in a lake or playa is a major source of salt. Okay, that is an important thing. Luni usually disappears in the run of Kutch, and the region north of the Luni is known as the Thali that we already discussed. And this entire region used to be under the sea during the Mesozoic era. Okay, that is something that NCERT mentions. So I have told you that little detail also. Okay. अभी डेजर्ट्स पर क्या हम ना कोस्टल प्लेन्स भी कवर कर लेते हैं, फिर हम दोनों के क्वेश्चन साथ में कंसिडर करते हैं. ओके, डेजर्ट हो गया, लेट्स कंसिडर द कोस्टल प्लेन्स. The way to study coastal plains is we contrast them. Okay, we will compare and contrast the western and eastern coastal plains. A western coastal plains famously an example of submerged coast, right? Eastern coastal plains famously an example of an emergent coast. Western coastal plains is usually a narrow belt. The belt is pretty narrow in the middle and it becomes a little broader to the north and south. Okay, whereas eastern coastal plains generally has a broad belt. Okay, the reason being it's an emergent coast. The eastern Ghats are very well eroded. It's a low-lying plain also. So and there are multiple deltas over there. So the coastal plains are generally expanded. Okay, this has a very narrow continental shelf. The western coastal plains have a very narrow continental shelf, so they make excellent harbors over there. Okay, whereas the eastern coastal plains have a wide continental shelf. Ideally, you should not have great harbors over there. Okay, ports and harbors के लिए बहुत अच्छी जगह नहीं है. Western coastal plains have very short and swift rivers because the Western Ghats are right next to it. The rivers will come down from you, if the west. This is the Western Ghats, people. Look, we are saying this is the Western Ghats. Okay, so clearly there are rivers going to come this way also, and there are those long rivers which go all the way throughout the Peninsula Plateau also. Okay, this is if we are talking about the Western Ghats. So these rivers, the one to the west, the one that flow through the Western coastal plains, are going to be shorter, swifter rivers. Okay, so clearly not enough erosion and not enough deposition also to form deltas. Okay, so that delta formation is not something you see on the western coastal plains. Okay, now contrast that with the eastern coastal plains. You will have long, large rivers over there, so more erosion. If there is more erosion, clearly there is more sediment to be deposited, and so you will see very well developed deltas of the Mahanadi, Godavari, Krishna, Kaveri. You will find all those deltas over there. Okay, Western coastal plains offer very natural conditions for ports and harbors because it is very well indented, what do you say, narrow continental shelf, deeper coast and also Kandla, Mazgaon, JNPT, Marmagaon, Mumbai, Mangalore, Kochi, all of these major ports you will find over there. Okay. On the other hand, coastal plains are not very easy way to develop ports and harbors, but you will see man-made ports over there. Tuticorin, Chennai, Ennore, Visakhapatnam. Visakhapatnam is entirely landed off. We've just carved a channel in the rock just to make the ships come in and go out. Okay, so that is a different thing altogether. That's just technology, engineering. Divisions of the western coastal plains are going to be begin in the Gujarat region. You call that as the Kutch and the Kathiawad coast. Okay, come to the Maharashtra part, you call it as the Konkan coast, and when you go to Karnataka, Kerala, you call it as the Malabar coast. Okay, the divisions in the eastern coastal plains will be northern Sircars and Coromandel coast. Okay, northern Sircars is the Odisha Andhra part, and Coromandel coast will be the Tamil Nadu, a little bit of Telangana part. Okay, we are looking at that. Not Telangana, Andhra part. Okay. Then features of the Malabar. This is famous. It is famous for the kayals, so the backwaters. You know, the backwaters are called as kayals, those small back channels. Fishing hota hai wahan pe, inland navigation hai. There is tourism over there, and there's a very famous boat race over there, which is called as the Nehru Trophy Verlamkalli. Okay, and they play it out in the Punnamada Kayal. Okay, that's the place where they play it out. The Punnamada Kayal is a lake kind of a thing, a backwater lake kind of a thing. And Coromandel ke features are it does not get rainfall from the southwest monsoon because you're looking at this part of the world, right? This section. You're looking at this section, right? Clearly, it is in the rain shadow region of the Western Ghats, so it will not receive rains from the Arabian Sea branch, and the Western and the Bay of Bengal branch is going to be parallel to it. Okay, so it does not get rain from the southwest monsoon. Where does it get its rainfall from? Northeast monsoon, the one that is coming, going to blow all over the Bay of Bengal and then come to India. Okay, it will get its rainfall from the northeast monsoon. चलो हो गया वो भी. आइलैंड्स कर लेने हैं. रुकिए वहां से जाके क्वेश्चंस करते हैं वरना आप वापस क्वेश्चन से ढूंढ पाओगे. हमने ये वाला बताइए. Which of the following statements is incorrect? The western coastal plains are broader than the eastern coastal plains. Eastern coastal plains have multiple deltas of major rivers. Coromandel coast is part of the eastern coastal plain, and eastern coastal plains are associated with a wide continental shelf. Which one is incorrect? Huh? Western coastal plains broader है क्या ईस्टर्न से? नहीं, नहीं, they are way narrower, right? तो ये वाला स्टेटमेंट सही नहीं है. ईस्टर्न कोस्टल प्लेन्स के मल्टीपल डेल्टास होते हैं. हाँ जी है, कृष्णा, कावेरी, गोदावरी, महानदी. कोरोमंडल कोस्ट इज अ पार्ट ऑफ द ईस्टर्न कोस्टल प्लेन. यस, नीचे वाला तमिलनाडु वाला पार्ट है ना. एंड द ईस्टर्न कोस्टल प्लेन्स आर एसोसिएटेड विद द वाइड कॉन्टिनेंटल शेल्फ. यस, दैट इज आल्सो ट्रू. सो वील गो विद स्टेटमेंट ए. ओके, स्टेटमेंट ए इज द इनकरेक्ट वन. कंकर वगैरह हो गया ना, लद्दाख नहीं करना है. ये वाला पार्ट बताइए. The western part of the Indian desert is called Marusthali, and the Marusthali is barren land covered with a thin layer of sand. कौन सा statement सही है? Which statement is correct? Is the western part of the Indian desert called as Marusthali? Yes, है ना? And is the Marusthali barren land that is covered by thin layer of sand? No, it has proper sand dunes. No, it has proper sand dunes, Balkans, all sorts of deserts. So that is this barren land covered by a thin layer of sand is actually called as Rajasthan Bangar. Okay, so we are going with only statement one is correct. Only this statement is going to be correct. Which of the following rivers has an ephemeral drainage and disappears in the run of Kutch? Your options are Luni. Luni famously disappears in the run of Kutch. Okay. अरे ये वाला भी बताइए, हमने सेंट्रल प्लेन्स जब किए थे तब ये करना चाहिए था. Which of the following pairs and pairs of mountains peaks are mismatched? Nilgiris Dodabetta, Eastern Ghats Sadbhavna, Western Ghats Anamudi, and Aravali's Guru Shikhar. सेकंड ईस्टर्न घाट सद्भावना है ना. ईस्टर्न घाट्स में आपको कौन से पीक्स मिलते हैं? जिंदा गाडार, माकोंडा, महेंद्रगिरी. यू आर लुकिंग एट दोस पीक्स ओवर देयर. ओके. नीलगिरीज डोडाबेट्टा, वेरी ट्रू. नीलगिरीज का हाईएस्ट पीक इज गोइंग टू बी डोडाबेट्टा. ओके. सद्भावना इज पार्ट ऑफ द व्हिच माउंटेन्स वी आर टॉकिंग ऑफ? विंध्यास. विंध्यास में सद्भावना मिलता है ना. सातपुड़ा इज धूपगढ़. And Aravali's is Guru Shikhar. Tallest peak is Guru Shikhar, and Western Ghats ka generally tallest peak is going to be Anamudi. If you're looking for the very specific range, it's going to be Anamalai. Okay, that range. ये हमने किया, ये कर लिया. Okay, good. Now we go to islands. Okay, Indian islands देख लेते हैं. दो islands होंगे, अंडमान निकोबार and लक्षद्वीप islands. Okay, अभी try to understand अंडमान निकोबार. एक blue shirt, come and sit over here. हाँ नहीं, एकदम सामने सबसे आगे फर्स्ट बेंच पे जाके बैठिए. हाँ जी. ओके. सो वी आर सेइंग अंडमान निकोबार आइलैंड्स जो है, दोनों की ओरिजिन स्टोरीज सुन लीजिए. अंडमान निकोबार आइलैंड्स वी बिलीव आर अ पार्ट ऑफ द आइलैंड चेन दैट वाज कनेक्टेड टू द अराकान रेंज, एंड देन यू नो इट गॉट सबमर्ज्ड एंड वी लॉस्ट द कनेक्शन. वेरी करेक्ट. दैट इज द स्टोरी ओवर देयर. तो हम मानते हैं कि वो वोल्केनिक आइलैंड्स है, बट यू विल सी कोरल रीफ्स का एविडेंस आल्सो ओवर देयर. ओके. व्हेयरएज लक्षद्वीप आइलैंड्स आर फेमसली कोरल आइलैंड्स, कोरलाइन आइलैंड्स मानते हैं हम उसको. ओके. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि अंडमान निकोबार पे कहीं भी आपको कोरल नजर नहीं मिलते, बट अंडमान निकोबार आइलैंड्स फेमसली वोल्केनिक मानते हैं हम लोग, एंड लक्षद्वीप फेमसली कोरलाइन मानते हैं. ओके, ठीक है. अंडमान निकोबार आइलैंड्स जो है, दे लाई इन द बे ऑफ बंगाल बिटवीन 6 to 14 degrees north and 92 to 94 degrees east. Okay, if UPSC dares to mention something in the, if NCERT dares to mention something in their textbook, I would suggest you remember those facts, because they keep asking you about these things. Okay. There are some 572 islands, of which 37 are inhabited. Clearly, Andaman Nicobar Islands are the larger group of islands. Okay, and you will find two principal groups of islets over here, both in this part, Richie's archipelago, and you will find the Labyrinth Islands. Okay, both you will find in this part. एक major division है between the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. You see, this is the Andaman Islands to the north. Okay, these are the Andaman Islands to the north, and these are the Nicobar Islands to the south. And the water body that divides them is famously called as the 10-degree channel. Okay, उसको 10-degree channel बुलाते हैं. And अगर आप देख within the Andaman Islands, if you see the these three islands, North, Middle, and South Andaman, and उनके बीच में एक water body है which separates it from the Little Andaman. Okay, so that water body is going to be called as the Duncan Passage. Remember these. There is no other way of doing this. अरे आप क्या बातें कर रहे हैं? आप लोगों को अगर बातें करनी है ना, तो आप यहाँ ना बैठा कीजिए, आप कहीं और जाइए ना. अच्छा. We have the Duncan Passage, which separates the South Andaman from the Little Andaman. Okay. We believe that some of these are considered elevated portions of submarine mountains. Some are volcanic, some are coral. Okay. तो volcanic, coral दोनों का मिलता है, लेकिन these are famously volcanic islands. Okay. Capital जो है यहाँ का Port Blair, that's situated in South Andaman. Once again, an important question. Saddle Peak in North Andaman is the highest peak over here. Please remember that. Barren Island is an active volcano. Narcondam is a extinct volcano. नजर आ रहा है आपको? This is Barren Island over here. This is the Barren Island. This is Narcondam Island. Okay. So these are active and extinct volcanoes over here. Actually, Narcondam को extinct नहीं बोलना चाहिए, dormant बोले तो better है, क्योंकि there is no evidence कि अभी उसमें कभी भी ऐसा activity नहीं होगा, right? And you usually get a convectional type of rainfall, equatorial type of vegetation. We are closer to the equator, so we clearly get a good equatorial type of vegetation. This is also India's first and only tri-service command. Port Blair hosts that since 2001 to safeguard India's strategic interest in Indian Ocean region. We are also planning a 13th major port over here in Galathea Bay. We had discussed this earlier. So वो एक port भी हम plan कर रहे हैं. अब तो India के जैसे plans बनेंगे वैसे बनेंगे, but at least that is in the planning. Okay. And यहाँ पर हमने 3 islands को rename किया है. Ross Island, which has been renamed as the Bose Island. नील आइलैंड विच वी कॉल एज अ शहीद आइलैंड एंड हैवलॉक जिसको हमने स्वराज बुलाया. ओके जब उन्होंने 2018 में इसको रीनेम किया था तो 2019 में आपको एक क्वेश्चन पूछा था. उसके बाद कभी तो बीच के 5-6 सालों में एक बार दोबारा उन्होंने आपको एक क्वेश्चन पूछा. ओके सो यू डिसाइड आपको कितनी इंफॉर्मेशन रिटेन करनी है बिकॉज यूपीएससी कीप्स कमिंग बैक टू इट अगेन एंड अगेन. ओके नेक्स्ट यू गो टू. सो हमको यहाँ पे दो मेजर वाटर बॉडीज मिलते हैं. द 10 डिग्री चैनल दैट डिवाइड्स द अंडमान एंड निकोबार आइलैंड्स एंड द डंकन passage which will provide as a divider between the South Andaman and the Little Andaman Island. Okay. Now you go to the Lakshadweep Islands. We are saying Lakshadweep Islands जो है, they lie in the Arabian Sea. Okay, between 8 and 12 degrees north to and 71 degrees to 74 degrees east. Okay. So 36 islands are यहाँ पे, of which 11 are inhabited. It is considered a it has multiple coral reefs and atolls and generally considered great for tourism. Like people will prefer going to Lakshadweep for tourism. Okay. Coral deposits है. यहाँ पर सबसे नीचे जो मिनिकॉय करके island दिखाई दे रहा है. Can you make out this मिनिकॉय over here? हाँ. That is considered the largest island among all these. Okay. And it is also the southernmost of all of these islands. Okay. Now मिनिकॉय अगर सदर्न मोस्ट है तो दिस 8 डिग्री चैनल इज सेपरेटेड फ्रॉम इंटरनेशनल वाटर्स जी मालदीव्स के साथ. ओके एंड देन ऑफ कोर्स देयर इज द इसका जो कैपिटल है वो कवरट्टी है यहाँ पर. ओके देयर इज द 11 डिग्री चैनल दैट विल डिवाइड द अमंदवी एंड द लक्षद्वीप आइलैंड्स और द कन्नौर आइलैंड्स. ओके तो दिस इज द 11 डिग्री चैनल दैट डिवाइड्स दिस एंड द 9 डिग्री चैनल व्हिच विल सेपरेट द लक्षद्वीप आइलैंड्स फ्रॉम द मिनिकॉय. ओके तो वो एक 11 डिग्री चैनल है अमंदवी फ्रॉम देयर. ओके नाउ वी आर सेइंग कि यहाँ पर स्ट्रॉन्ग बीचेस मिलते हैं आपको अनकंसोलिडेटेड पेबल्स. जनरली प्रिटी प्लेस. ओके वी जस्ट गो विद जनरली प्रिटी प्लेस. ऑलराइट दैट्स लक्षद्वीप आइलैंड्स फॉर यू. यहाँ पर और कुछ मेजर चीजें नहीं हो रही है. व्हिच ब्रिंग्स अस बैक टू दिस प्लेस. कुछ बचा है यहाँ पे हमने करने का? नहीं वी आर डन ओवर हियर. गिव मी अ मिनट. Here, next time now we are going to cover Indian drainage. So before doing that, we'll cover the PYQs based on this topic. Okay.